Okay, I'm going to go over the rhythm stuff we talked about today. Use my high-tech pen here to hold the page up to the screen and point. So hopefully this shows up okay for you. So, biggest things were, so you implemented the chords today. The first time the chord rhythm really starts are up here on these rhythm slashes. So it's just saying if you're 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, because they're straight eighth notes. And then we come down here where things start to get more interesting, a bit more changes. So we start with a dotted quarter note. So remember, the dot means you add half of the value to what's being dotted. In other words, half of a quarter note is an eighth note. So when you see a dotted quarter note, you're adding an eighth note to the quarter note. If it was a dotted half note, a half note gets a count of 2. That lasts for 2 beats. If you have, or a half of the half note is a quarter note. So when you see a dotted half note, that gets the length of half note plus a quarter note. So that's why here this dotted quarter note gets the length of a quarter plus a half note. So we have our dotted quarter note, and then the next time we strum is right here on this eighth note, which is on the upbeat of 2. So we have 1 and. Now this, our slur mark here, it's not really a slur mark anymore. This is now a tie mark. So when you see this happen, you do not strum this next part, because this is tied to the length of this. So we have this eighth note tied to this eighth note, followed by another eighth note, followed by a quarter note. So the beat here, we have the 1 and 4. And that's what's written underneath. Okay, so the next thing, exact same thing. You have the 1 and 4. Then here we have our dotted quarter note again. So again, that lasts a beat and a half. And then we have this eighth note tied to a half note. And the half note gets 2 beats. So we have 1 and. So basically, you're going to hold that out for counts 3 and 4. So hopefully you can hear my foot tapping along there. So you got 1 and. That's how that bar goes. So this one, we have eighth notes and a quarter note. So this eighth note here on the upbeat of 2 is tied to the downbeat of 3. So we don't play on the downbeat of 3, but we do play on the upbeat of it. So we have 1 and 2 and 4. 1 and 2 and 4. So down here, next bar we have 1 quarter note, 2 eighth notes, but this last eighth note is tied to a half note, which is tied to a whole note. So remember, the whole note gets a count of 4, so that lasts the entire beat, or the entire bar, not beat, the entire bar. So the count here would only be 1, 2, and. So I'm just tapping out what the beats are instead of saying it out loud. I'm only saying out loud the part of the count that we play on, so it makes a bit more sense on matching it up. Because if I counted out 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 right now in the video, I don't want you to think you're supposed to play on it. So that's why I'm not counting that part out loud, just tapping it. So again, you have 1, 2, and. Okay, so here we have our dotted quarter note again. Then the eighth note, this time tied to a quarter note, followed by another quarter note. So we'd have 1 and 4. Again, that is 1 and 4. Okay, So here is just straight eighth notes, so you have your 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and then here we have quarter note, 2 eighth notes, but this eighth note is tied to this eighth note, and then 3 more eighth notes. So this eighth note tied to this eighth note basically lasts the length of a quarter note. So we have 1, 2 and 4 and 1, 2 and 4 and then the bar finish, or this part finishes out with 1 quarter note, 6 eighth notes. So you have 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and 1, 2 and 3 and 4 and then that's the rhythm stuff that we got. So on the next page, the one that's printed out for you to start writing things down, I'm just going to look through here real quick and see if there's anything kind of funny. So there are some symbols here probably should take a look at that you're going to come across. Now let's look here. So second line, the end of the second bar. What's happening, get this situated here. Okay, so what's happening here on this last note, so right here, that's the tie mark again, and this is tied here, but you notice you have the same looking mark going across from this note to this note. This could be a little bit confusing. What's happening is this note is tied to this note, but not this one. If you look closely, this note is sitting on top of the line, that note is sitting on the line. So this note and that note are different. So he's basically doing like a pull-off with his voice. On the part where it says sky, he's going sky, and he's kind of singing he's dropping it that half step. So, is it a half step? No, that'd be a whole step because of the jerk. No. Anyway, I guess it doesn't matter right now. Anyhow, so yeah, he's going from this note, and he's doing like a pull off with his voice down to that. So when you're writing this one out, this one beat right here, you don't play on that, but you do on the upbeat of 1, because he's got that note is tied over to the upbeat of, or here, and then the next note happens on the upbeat. The same thing happens here. So you have these notes are tied together, but this one is actually a pull-off. So the only way to know if it's a tie or if it's a pull-off or hammer-on with the voice or anything like this, even in like in standard notation stuff, or any, well, it is standard notation, isn't it? You just got to watch and see if the note is different. So if the notes are the same, you know it's a tie. If the notes are different, you know it's a pull-off or a hammer-on happening. Let's see, other things to look at. So let's see, where I just had it in mind. Where the heck? Oh, right up here. So looking at the end of this second line here, there's some more rest symbols. So right here, that's a quarter note rest, and then that's another quarter note rest, and then you got an eighth note rest. That's a eighth note for the word her. So all kinds of stuff getting rested right here. And it looks like they have almost like two things happening, which is look kind of weird. But basically, this right here is, they have a whole note rest in there, but I really don't know why. I don't know why they have a whole note rest along with all these other things. It doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know if that was a typo or what. Because there's not 2 vocals going on with it. Oh, wait. No, never mind. No, well. I'm probably I'm confusing the crap out of you right now. I apologize. So, let's ignore this thing right here. Just ignore that for right now. Right here, you have a half note rest, which gets a beat of 2, quarter note rest, gets a beat of 1, and then you have an eighth note rest, which gets the half beat, and then you have where he's singing her. I get it now. Where he's singing her, that's where the eighth note comes in. So they have multiple melody vocal lines coming down here. So all these notes up here, the notation stuff is for when he's singing the word her. When it's the whole note rest sitting in there, that's when he's not singing it. So they have basically two different vocal lines right here in this one bar. So that's going to be confusing. So one vocal line is following the notes that are kind of sitting here at the top, or the symbols anyway. So you have a half note rest, quarter note rest, eighth note rest, eighth note that you play on. And then the other vocal line, you're looking at just this little black bar, which is a whole note rest. And the way I tell the difference between a whole note and half note, and you're going to see that happen even down here. So that is 1, 2, 3, fourth line near the end. You have a couple different vocal lines going again. So they want to make it confusing. But basically, right here on those three notes, those are the same. And then once you get here where the word pass is, that you're going to have those, the notes up here, that's the vocal melody for one thing. And then down here you have a half note rest and then a whole note rest. Basically the half note rest, I remember that because it kind of looks like a top hat. So top hat, half, kind of remember it that way. Hat and half. So hopefully that makes sense. Sometimes looking at vocal melodies can be a little bit confusing. But if you have any questions, let me know. I'll try and explain it before next week if I can. If I think it's too complicated, then we'll definitely hit it at 1 o'clock on Sunday from now on. Okay, let me know if you got questions, and we'll see you Sunday.